Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic is sexting cheating. Of course, sexting is cheating. In fact, texting is the worst sort of cheating because it is emotional and not physical. Physical cheating is terrible, but you can theoretically turn off your mind and just experience a bodily release. But emotional cheating has a far deeper conundrum, even though there's no messy fluids exchange, stuff to clean up and wipe off, or a chance for a new life to be created. As we move from the physical to the virtual world, sex and innuendo and flirting also go along for this sticky ride, because we are people who want to connect with something, with anybody, because we are lonely and looking for companionship. It's much easier to cheat and find company today than it was a generation ago, because you can have 100 relationships online, and if you're discreet enough, you can secrete them all from each other. The old-fashioned way, the body way, you'd have to actually physically be in the same room with the person for the kissing and the groping and the fluid exchanges. Well, that takes time, and tide is against you. And you have to be good at scheduling. And that's why there are so many office romances. Very common. Because you're right there, same place, with the other person, 10 hours a day. Carlos Danger is the sad epitome of cheating in a virtual, modern world in politics. Carlos Danger is the code name for Anthony Weiner, a failed New York politico and sad husband of Hillary Clinton's right-arm woman, Huma Abedin. Huma and Anthony have a toddler who is also caught in the middle of this inhuman moral cusp, this crime against right living, even as Anthony Weiner calls his 4-year-old son online, in private texts, a chick magnet. Here's some backstory. In 2011, Anthony Weiner, and yes, with a last name like Weiner, you're always going to be in trouble and look for trouble because you're going to have to deal with dick jokes all your life. And I should know. Even though I was born David Isherwood, my name became, through convenience and my mother's second marriage, Boles. And I heard a lot of toilet bowls jokes to fill a urinal. But we must move beyond our names, our labels. We don't always have to be where we're from. And so Anthony Weiner got his penis caught in the wringing of his underwear in public, and that caused him to resign his seat in the U.S. Congress because he was sexting with women who were not his wife. His wife, Huma, one missing N away from being named human, had been publicly humiliated, and she continued to work for Hillary while her husband Anthony, it appears, just sort of sat around. Now we have a new documentary about Anthony Weiner called, yes, the title, Weiner, and it follows his 2013 run for mayor of New York against eventual winner Bill de Blasio. I watched the documentary and found it to be completely sad. Weiner has no sense of who he is or how his actions wound others. There's a joke going around New York that Weiner is actually the Democrat Donald Trump. And that may be true. Another narcissist who cannot stay away from a mirror or a camera, seeking a reflection they understand but cannot appear to comprehend. The most interesting part of the documentary was that Weiner's run for mayor was her idea, not his. And I think that's the first evidentiary break that she may have been tiring of being Hillary Clinton's whipping post and instead wanted to whip her own Weiner into credulity so she might have a life of her own. And so the documentary hints, if you're paying attention, that in 2013, Uma wanted Anthony to resurrect and stop recoiling from his scandal and become a man she could believe in on her own terms. Anthony went along with the scheme, and of course, more sexting revelations humiliated him and her right in the middle of his mayoral campaign, after they'd both promised voters he'd been clean and not involved in any more dirty online deeds. Weiner loses the election, comes in last place. Uma loses her escape route from Hillary. Now, some are feeling sorry for Weiner. They think he's a great man who cares about the people if he could only get help for his sexting addiction. I am not of that mind. Weiner is in this life only for himself, and everything and everyone he touches will be defiled and publicly humiliated because it gives him a thrill and makes him feel important. And I can say that because there are clear observations made by anyone by merely watching his documentary and listening to how Weiner speaks and behaves in his own words, in his own documented life. Cheating on your spouse is nothing new in politics. Virtual connections make it all simpler now. But years ago, the old horny boys had a harder nut to crack in public if they wanted to humiliate their wives, as it seemed so many of them wanted to do. In the modern era, we have Marilyn Monroe and the ongoing John F. Kennedy humiliation of his wife, Jackie, all done in public, especially during his birthday party and that famous song. Should we admire the man who got a thrill out of making his wife look ridiculous? Or do we only tally in a life using beauty and intellect? JFK cared more for the welfare of poor blacks in America than he did for his own wife. In 1979, Nelson Rockefeller, a Republican and vice president under Gerald Ford, died of a heart attack while having sex with his mistress. He was married with children, and yet the pull of a young woman was too enchanting to be denied or confessed. Dying is such sweet sorrow for the humiliated wife. The 1980s brought us Gary Hart and Donna Rice and the monkey business boat. And for the first time, we sort of had hard photographic evidence of romance and cheating as Donna sat on Gary's lap. And right there, in that moment when the picture was taken, his Democrat presidential hopes were quickly dust-binned because he broke the first rule of flirting: be discreet and leave no evidence behind. The 1990s brought us Bill Clinton. He loved and admired JFK, perhaps in all the wrong ways. In Washington, D.C., there was a crude meme making the rounds that, with Bill Clinton elected, pussy was back in the White House. And it was so. Bill Clinton had a series of sexual affairs with women across the arc of his life. And yet 2 women stood by him in public: his humiliated wife, Hillary Clinton, and his also humiliated but loving daughter, Chelsea. And both Hillary and Chelsea must still dream of the days when they had no idea who Monica Lewinsky was, or Linda Tripp, or Ken Starr. But Hillary knew the depths of trouble were out there, lurking for her, waiting to attack her in defense of her perpetually cheating husband. Do we feel humiliated for Hillary? Or has she always been aware of the deal she made with the devil of her own choosing? In 2007, Democrat presidential contender John Edwards cheated on his cancer-stricken wife and had a baby with his mistress out of wedlock. It was an affair that turned every human stomach and an empathetic revulsion at the sort of man we hoped John Edwards was, but never was. Are there any right men and women left in politics? The Obamas have a good stand for morality and righteousness. But there are still some on the other side of the realm who cannot get past his skin color to give him a modicum of credit for being a loving husband and a dynamic father. And perhaps that's the great lesson in the final analysis of these public politicos. That on some sad level we want people elected to office who are easily humiliated because it enlivens our status. We feel we are so much better than they, so let them do the dirty work of governing instead of us. And we'll wink and whisper and look the other way, just because it's simpler to do that than to sit down and demand the facts of the matter. Sometimes the truth becomes all-encompassing, and it devours the unrighteous, like Anthony Weiner, while others, before him, who have charm and self-awareness, are still allowed to walk with the giants of history, because we are too humiliated ourselves to disprove the anthology of what was written and that which is not true. Thank you for listening. Be a human me.